we've got the new wishlist feature for Covenant summons. Really, really nice. You can pick up the 7 heroes and 7 artifacts to put as your focus for the Covenant summon banner. But whenever you roll on this, you'll only be able to get those heroes and artifacts. It's nice for getting new units or artifacts. It's nice for getting dupes of units and artifacts. And anybody who's played Epic 7 for more than, I guess, a few months knows that Epic 7 hands out a ton of free Covenant summons in events. We probably get like hundreds per year, plus our 1 daily summon for free, which I didn't even include. So this is going to honestly be pretty impactful. So let's talk about what the best heroes and artifacts to put on your wish list are. One thing is just anybody, like, when you're selecting your hero and artifact, click off to confirm, because if you click on the thing on the bottom, it's just going to reset your entire wish list. I kind of hope they move this. But let's take a look at the hero wish list first. At the very top is Fede. She's a PvE unit only, and I have a PvE tier, but she is just that good, I think. She obliterates a lot of expeditions, any expedition except for Earth. She's great into Light. She's, I would say, just okay, but in terms of not having to build more units, she's still usable there. And she's great into Magnar and Constellation, which Expedition and Constellation rotate at the same time. They've changed the PvE thing to be a rotating system, so you'll only have her be, or only those 2 pieces of content will be available every three weeks out of 6. But I think she's still just super nice to have in general, because she's got such a great mix of damage and healing. You can use her anywhere. She's probably going to be great in some of the advents as well. And then, also for a lot of Hall Trials autos, she ends up being very useful because she does good damage and healing. And then there's Setsuka, who is just such a nuisance in PvP. Like, the only thing to note with Setsuka, I would say, is that she's so hated by the community. Hopefully she gets, like, killed off sooner rather than later, and also because she's an RGB, it's more likely that she gets killed off, I think, compared to some other units. But as it is now, she's just so absurdly strong that, like, you need to have a copy of Setsuka, I think, for RTA, and even just to, like, put on your Guild War defense or something. You can use her on offense if you really want to. Like, Miss is pretty RNG, but there's certain comps where it kind of doesn't really matter, and she will do a ton of damage. She's just a complete nuisance and definitely worth having. And then there's more. Note that if you're a newer player and you have Path of Air, he's available for free in the selector there, so you can pick him up from there. Otherwise, you'll have to get him from Covenant Summons. Mort is very nice to have because of his S2 counter removal passive. It removes counters for literally everybody except for himself, so do keep in mind that you can't run him with other counter units on your own team. But this makes him great into certain stuff like Setsuka or a new kid add-in. There's a lot of Guild War defenses that he works super well into, especially in combination with Young Senya, but even without Young Senya, he's still great into certain defenses. I think he's just nice to have a copy of, given how strong his S2 passive is, and his S3 does a ton of damage as well. Down in A tier, we have Rwana, who honestly could be an S tier unit. She's just been such a useful counterpick unit ever since her release, and to any sort of unit that does counter attacks, full attacks, or extra attacks, mainly AoE ones. AoE ones is where she shines the most, but she's still useful into single target ones. She's just been like at least A tier ever since she came out, which I think is kind of ridiculous. She's really strong right now, specifically, I think, given the way that the defense meta kind of is. Rwana, the Lionheart Sturmia, Empyrean Olanav, and Fallen Cecilia, kind of quick battles, like almost every defense in Arena. Maybe I would say at least over half of them. It's kind of insane. And for PvE, she's great into Ice Expedition and also into Hooray in Trial of the Constellations. So very nice to have. There's some other places that she gets used too. A couple of the Advents I remember using her. I think at this point though, Advent hasn't been around in a while, but I think at this point we have better units to use, but she's definitely usable there if you need to. Just, her S2 passive is that good. Next is Elvira. Elvira, if you don't have Lady of the Scales, is a little bit lower, but even without Lady of the Scales, her S2, removing all fighting spirit, is very, very useful. You can just, there are certain units that just don't function without their fighting spirit, and she's going to be very nice to have into those. If you have Lady of the Scales plus Elvira is absolutely absurd for Guild War, because the Lady of the Scales passive, Elvira can't die, then you get the S3, you get 3-turn immortality. By the time your immortality runs out, you have enough souls to soul burn, so you get another 3 turns. It's like minimum 6 turns of being completely unkillable. You can just run Scales, Elvira, plus a DPS, like a strong DPS, and it obliterates a lot of Guild War defenses. It's pretty absurd. And then we have Yoha and Crow, who are somewhat similar units. If we're comparing them to each other, Yoha, I would say, is better damage because her S3 resets on kill and also heals her, so you can kind of wipe out certain teams. And for S2, the damage reflect is nice. Crow, on the other hand, though, his S2 team defense buff and also built-in Aureus effect makes him a lot better for just protection by itself. But they're both great units, especially for Guild War. And then there is Genua. Genua, you want Sea Phantom Politis to maximize him so that you can give him Rage immediately, and he'll do all of his damage and stuff. But even without Sea Phantom Politis, there are certain defenses in Guild War where I think you can use him and be fine. I use him in, honestly, most of my attacks that I do with Genua. I don't use Politis, but that's because I don't really race much with Politis. Politis getting her, not really buff, but finally an artifact that actually synergizes super well with her is also very strong right now, though. And then there is normal Politis, who, she's kind of like, she's a counter pick unit and she's a little bit RNG because you're relying on Crown, but her S2 has made her at least a decent unit pretty much since her release. Like, she usually hovers like B or A, I would say. Like, I don't even know if she's necessarily A, but just keep her up here. And she's just nice to have a copy of, I think. She's, yeah, even if she's not necessarily the greatest, it's just nice to have around. And then here we have some more niche units. Chenille, Death Dealer Ray Counter. There's not really too much to say about him. Like, you can use him to solo Banshee or whatever if you really want to. Freeman does the same, though, and I'm not sure how much you want to be farming Banshee in the first place, but he does solo Banshee. Abigail. One thing with Abigail is that you kind of don't necessarily need her as much as you used to, because Lady of the Scales fulfills a somewhat similar role, but there are times where I use Abigail, especially if it's like a MLK run comp in Guild War. I still use Abigail a decent bit. I think she's nice to have around. Celine, another anti non-attack skill unit. The only thing with her is she can be like manipulated to an extent, and even with her stealth buff, I feel like she's still like decently easy to take out, but you definitely always want to have a Celine build just in case somebody screws up and you end up in a situation where Celine just absolutely ruins them. Fumir, I think she's not like amazing, but nice to have. Just a lot of situations where you can use Fumir because her condition is relatively easy to proc. The only problem is just if you're picking like all ML units, you can't really do that. She's like okay, I would say, not like super important, but maybe nice to have. Elena, just a counter pick unit. Sometimes units that like can proc her S2, you'll be able to cut and get your invincibility. It's not always guaranteed, but just nice to have around. Arya, mostly just a Guild War unit. I feel like she's a unit where it really just depends how much you feel like building her, because her gear is kind of annoying to get, and there's a lot of units you can use for Guild War at this point. So she does work into certain teams. I think most of those teams you probably want a quick battle just because she would take a while, but potentially nice to have if you want to do Guild War. We have the PvE tier here too. So these are just various PvE units I think are nice. Fenris, if I had to place him somewhere, I'd say he's probably like A tier. He's really, really strong PvE DPS. Like, he's good against Aquinas in Trial of the Constellation, great for Ice Expedition. He's best in slot for Ice and Light Expedition, rather. He's just really, really good. The only thing is that it's like, Penny kind of does a lot of the stuff already, and he's not really mandatory, but I think he's one of the best PvE units. We have Charles. Charles is great against Aquinas in Trial of the Constellations. Again, we have to keep in mind that a lot of the PvE content is like rotating now, so they're not permanently going to be good. Which, I mean, I guess before it was like once a month, now it's once every 6 weeks. For Charles, him and Irvelin are somewhat tied together. The only thing, I have Irvelin at the back here, just because we don't know what changes they're making to the blessings. Like, if they remove the Thief Blessing, then suddenly Irvin is useless, which I'd assume they keep it in, because it'd be kind of messed up to remove the Thief Blessing for no reason. But Charles works with or without the blessing. And also, for Hall of Trials, which right now, you can see that he's really good into Astromancer Elena, because he gives himself a bunch of buffs, and also as the counterattack buff that you need for Elena's condition. So he's a pretty solid PvE unit. There's Cecilia, who's great into Earth Expedition, and also really good against Death Dealer Ray, and sometimes Abyssal Euphine, just kind of depends on what the rotation is. Pretty flexible, I think, PvE, like tank/support. For being a knight is really useful because a lot of content kind of like punishes you if you're not using a knight. And she's got really useful debuffs. I would think they think she's pretty good. Ball and Sezin, Earth Expedition, that's pretty much it, really, but maybe I have to reevaluate a bit with Expedition only being 3 out of 6 weeks now, because before I would just say that you want to be able to solo all of your expeditions. And that's still true, but probably a bit less important given how less frequently you'll see expeditions around. But he's just the best in slot debuffer for Earth Expedition. Tenebria is like considerably worse than him. And Lilibet, big nuke, S2 into S3 combo, S3 full Death Pen. I think she's not like absurdly strong, but there's some situations where you can use her. And then for Irvelin, I mean, I mentioned him already. He's just a Trials the Constellation DPS with Charles. Vildred, Speed Imprint. Honestly, Vildred is somebody, I think if you don't have an SSS Vildred, you should probably like permanently keep a Vildred in your rotation. Like, I think he's like honestly S tier if you don't have an SSS Vildred already, but I will mention him separately just because some people will say they have no intention of ever racing anybody, and I think even if you don't want to race people, you should probably get an SSS Vildred anyways. And here are just some various units that are like somewhat notable for imprints, like for Bossarunka, Empyrean Olav, Afternoon Soak Flan, Bystander Hua Young, and Argent Waves Hua Young, Maid Chloe, Ruel, the unreleased Sword Light Asaria, and also unreleased Painter and Aquil, potentially if you want to start saving up imprints for those. Next, let's take a look at the artifacts. So, for artifacts, we have Holy Sacrifice. Great knight artifact. Its biggest issue has always been that it needs plus 30, so it's a bit hard to use, and you're going to feel bad using it if it's not plus 30. I've still always recommended it S tier, regardless, because even if it's not plus 30, if you don't start getting your Holy Sacrifices now, when are you ever going to get them? I think Holy Sacrifice is an artifact you should permanently have on your artifact wish list. Like, this might be SS tier if anything, just because you're never going to take this off. You're always going to want more Holy Sacrifices. Limit break the one that you have, or start on another copy. It's just absurdly good, and especially because of how much you want plus 30 on it, I think this is permanently in your wish list. The effect being just you revive after you die. It's really nice for even just like in Guild Wars. Sometimes you take a bunch of aggro. Like, I use it on Mort sometimes in Guild Wars just because I need him to like not die that quickly. I don't feel like re-gearing him. It's great on just pretty much any sort of tanky knight. Renewed Will also really wants plus 30, just so you can consistently proc the effect, especially since the effect procs per unit. So if you ever miss, it's going to mess up your speed tuning. Renewed Will, PvP cleave artifact, and also has the attack boost, which ends up being useful sometimes in PvE purposes. I think you probably want one plus 30 copy of Renewed Will, and then after that you can probably stop. Windrider, EPS Thief artifact. There's honestly a decent amount of competition with Windrider. I think there's like a lot of really good Thief artifacts, but Windrider, in terms of just being the highest damage one, is generally going to be the best. The only competition really is Alexa's Basket in terms of damage if you don't have attack buff, but for units that have self-attack buff like Genua or Spirit Eye Celine, and there's probably some other options that I can't think of, Windrider is really, really good. Probably keep like 2 copies of this and start limit breaking one. Sacred Scythe is really good warrior producer artifact, but I feel like we haven't gotten any users for it in a while. Like, we got Bystander Hua Young, who is the best user of this, and then besides that, all the other users kind of stink. Like, there's Moonlight Ken, I guess Edward Elric, and Lone Crescent Bologna. None of them are like super, super good. You probably still want like 2 copies of this anyways, but I think just given that it's not like absurdly strong, I moved it down from its usual spot in S tier. Bird's Eye View, Soulgen artifact. You definitely want a copy of this. I would say at least get it to plus 24, and after that you can plus 30 it if you want. You don't really need it plus 30, but maybe the extra like 2 souls end up being useful in really niche situations where you could start another copy, or you could just stop. You could honestly move this artifact around a lot. I personally want 2 copies just so that I can like maybe use it on both teams in a Guild War attack. It's definitely an artifact that you can use on pretty much any Soul Weaver for a like more offensive punch. I use it on Lady of the Scales a lot just because I'll lead with Lady of the Scales, press S3 and get the souls from that. You can use it on like a ROM too. It's such a flexible artifact for Soul Weavers and enables so many different team comps, I think. Secret Art Storm Sword, I think is the name. I never remember the name of this artifact, but this artifact CR pushes you a ridiculous amount. Like, I don't know why it pushes you that much. It's kind of annoying to fight against because sometimes you'll fight against like a Sword Art Storm Renock on defense and it just cuts you and there's nothing you can really do about that. And the attack buff is also useful, though the attack buff does need plus 30 to be consistent. This artifact was made for Celine and synergizes absurdly well with her, but every once in a while there's some other unit that ends up wanting this artifact too. I think even though this artifact wants plus 30, it's nice to have 2 copies of after you finish your first one, just because like right now Renock uses it pretty decently. I think if you don't want to use her personal artifact or just for like defense cheese stuff. Previously Spirit Eye Celine used it before she got her massive DPS buff, and there's just like a bunch of different situations. I think CR manipulation is just very nice to have in general, so I think this artifact is pretty good. Thorn of the Blue Rose. This artifact giving you 10 souls just at the very start of the fight is nice, coming from like a warrior artifact, which doesn't really have other options. Your other option is like Pure White Trust, but you have to use an on-attack skill first for that, which could like maybe be a bit worse in some situations. But the Soulburn damage boost is kind of ridiculous. There's not really that many users of this artifact, but it's a pretty strong like general artifact, just in terms of giving you a free 10 cost Soulburn and making said Soulburn do a ton of damage. Shepherd of Chaos. Honestly, this might be a little bit high. It's the Evasion Thief artifact, but the users are going to be stuff like New Kid Add-in or Remnant Violet, who is not very good. If some people use this on Setsuka, so this is Setsuka's artifact right over here, and Bloodblade Karin could also use it just to be a bit of a nuisance. Like, you try to kill the Karin and 20% miss, yippee. So this is, if you're looking for an evasion artifact, it's going to be this one for Thieves. It's got a nice general effect with a damage boost compared to some other evasion artifacts that have more specific effects. This one's good on pretty much any thief. Then there's Alexa's Basket. This is for any DPS thieves that don't have self-attack buff. So stuff like Arbiter Vildred. A couple of seasons ago, Bloodblade Karin was seeing use with this because her S3 attack buff is after she attacks. And if you hit the greater attack buff, suddenly you do 1 billion damage. Last season, Spirit Eye Celine was seeing usage of this just because the way that teams were being built, you weren't necessarily going to have a buff for Celine, so You get Alexa's Basket, you get your free attack buff that way, and also a buff for, well, not, she has attack buff on her S1, but you get a buff to get her enhanced S1. And this artifact has kind of stuck around a decent amount. I think it's nice to have. This is Setsuka's artifact. It's really just for Setsuka, but Setsuka is good enough that I'm putting it up here. Like, maybe you can say it's like high B at worst. It's only for one unit, but Setsuka is really, really good. It's just another evasion artifact, and like I mentioned that some artifacts have more specific effects compared to Shepherd of Chaos's general damage boost. This one is just extra attack on S1. Awakened Leaf is for Sea Phantom Politis. Sea Phantom Politis got a massive boost from this artifact existing at all. Previously, her options were pretty bad, and this just, it's for Sea Phantom Politis. If you want to play Sea Phantom Politis Cleave, you should pick this up, and Sea Phantom Politis Cleave is very good. I have it a little bit lower because odds are if you're watching this, you probably can't properly play Sea Phantom Politis Cleave, but if you want to play it anyways, go ahead. You're going to want Awakened Leaf for it. It's because it CR pushes like somebody else. She had like no artifacts that could like actually help her allies much, besides I guess Spatio-Temporal Fan before. Nubarious Tooth is really just Amiki or Lone Wolf Para. The main thing is that you kind of need this artifact plus 30 for consistency, and especially for Amiki, I think you can just use a KD artifact, because Amiki actually does like a lot of damage on her actual hits. I think KD artifact works fine for Amiki, and also you don't need plus 30 for it to do its like procs consistently. There's also the question of like, exactly whether or not you want to plus 30 this artifact for them right now. Payer, on the other hand, definitely needs Tooth. She just doesn't really do damage. Again, because this needs plus 30, if you don't have like a plus 30 copy, you might want to keep this on your banner just so you can max it out and have at least one maxed out. Celestine, Soulweaver artifact, heal on not basic attack anymore, it's any single target attack. There's quite a few units that can use this. Like I think Aram uses this pretty frequently. Like you can use this on anybody you just want more healing on. Like if you really want to, you could use this on like Lady of the Scales or something and just spam Celestine. I think there's, especially in like Guild War situations, sometimes I just want the healing and ended up using this a decent bit. I think this is just a really nice artifact to have a copy of. Abyssal Crown, Mage artifact. You can use it on like Harsetti, Solitaria, Palmodus. It's an RNG artifact, and there's competition with it from Magic Bubble Maker, so that is a limited artifact. This is the non-limited version. I feel like this artifact you don't necessarily need a ton of, but probably pick up like a copy or two. And the limit breaks, I mean, RNG is RNG, it'll be slightly less RNG if you limit break it more. Elvish Ritual Sword, I feel like just keeps on getting worse. It used to be like way up in S tier, and now it's honestly not that good. Its only users are Abyssal Euphine and Navy Captain Landy. You're not going to get that great usage out of it. It's really just for those two units who aren't super strong right now anyways. I think you probably want like a copy just in case another unit that actually uses as well pops up somewhere, but you're not going to really lose any sleep over not having that many Elbrus copies. I think right now you probably need like one or two at most. The alternatives is just stuff like, or it's an alternative artifact for certain units like Bellion if you don't have 3F, which isn't going to be super great if you don't have 3F, or Genesis Ross if you don't have this personal artifact, I guess. There's Golden Rose, which is kind of another Sigurds just for HP or def scaling bruisers instead of attack scaling ones. This gives you damage boost when you're above half, or healing when you're below half. The healing isn't as much as Sigurd's because it's less healing, but also you lose your damage boost, while Sigurd's has its attack boost active permanently. So it does have like a couple of issues, but the damage, like the flat damage boost that it gets is really nice. It's an artifact I think you probably want to have like one or two copies of just in case as well. And then there's Umbral Keystones, CR Manipulation, really nice. After 2 units move, or I guess 2 turns are taken besides the holder, you'll get a CR push on whoever's holding this artifact, and it lets you tune certain setups. I think it's really nice, especially if it's like you just are trying to set up some sort of cleave and you want a certain unit to move at a specific time, you can set it up so that they'll move from the artifact CR push. Next up, we have Crown of Glory. It's really nice damage reduction. I think especially right now there's so much AoE damage that having this artifact ends up being really, really nice. For stuff like LRK or Empyrean Elnav, I think it's great on them. Empyrean Elnav on Crown of Glory is like one of my main Guild War units. It's very, very nice to have, especially if you're fighting something like Frieren, because you have the soul removal effect as well. Idol's Chair is another offensive Soul Weaver artifact. If you want to just spam CR push your highest attack ally, instead of getting the souls from Bird's Eye View, then you can run this. Unseen Observer, Soul Generation for Rangers. Honestly, I actually don't know how much this artifact gets used now that we have Awakened Leaf for Seafang the Politis. Before I was mainly using this on Politis for the souls, but Leaf we have instead, and you're still going to get like some usage out of this, just because I think Soul Generation in general is just very, very nice, and this is the only one for Rangers. Bastion of Perlucia, another niche artifact. The barrier plus immunity buff can be useful in some situations, just for buff stacking purposes, or if you want to protect your backline. And the buff that I got to give the effect also to the holder is pretty nice. Bloodstone, niche PvE artifact. It's only used in Earth Expedition, you don't really need it anywhere else. And Earth Expedition is, I mean, it gets hit the same a way that some other units did, where it's only on rotation for 3 out of 6 weeks. And so yeah, it's just a niche PvE artifact. Etika Scepter, exact same thing. It's really only used on Ball or the people who want to use Tenebria for Earth Expedition. And you'll maybe see like some niche usage in other places, but that's really the main place you'll see this. Touch of Rekos, pretty nice healing artifact. I think it's nice for both PvE and PvP. The main thing is that since it's once per turn, you probably want to use it on slightly faster units for PvP, but for PvE, like I think mainly in Hall of Trials and Ancient Inheritance, this artifact is really, really nice to have. Rod of Amaryllis, healing artifact. It's kind of a PvE artifact. I don't really ever use this myself personally, but I think in certain people who are maybe trying to do Abyss or just have worse geared teams might need the healing. For PvP, it's only really used by Diane, and Diane only really gets used in Guild War against certain comps, but having a copy of this can be nice for your Diane if you want. Down here, some very, very niche artifacts. Evasion, counterattack artifact. This is nice for ML Sharoon sometimes if you don't have Guardian Ice Crystals, and I also use this on Inos for PvE. This is Empyrean Elnav's artifact, though I feel like Empyrean Elnav right now everybody is Prodarius, so this artifact isn't actually getting used that much. Niche cleansing artifact. The cooldown on this is super, super long, but like certain turn 1 cleanses might be able to use this. Deathbreak artifact. Niche warrior CR push artifact. Shmadra staff, honestly, you don't really use that much. It's kind of nice to have sometimes, but you're never going to be like, wow, I wish I had some Shmadra staff, I think. This mainly gets used on Roana. Same with Stella Harpa. Stella Harpa gives you a chance to cleanse instead of bonus healing and some Ephras. They're just pretty niche Soul Weaver artifacts. Song of Stars, honestly, you don't really use this in PvE anymore. It's just for like slightly boosting your damage numbers in Expedition. That's really about it, and you get this for free as a new player anyways. Niche Soul Stealing Tech for Thieves, and I actually don't even know why I have this on here, just generic damage boost artifact for warriors. But while that took a while, that's pretty much all of the wishlist stuff, at least in the current state of the game. This wishlist is a permanent thing, as far as I know, so we'll probably see like some changes to your priorities for your wishlist as things go on. The ones that I'm personally running with is I have Hua-Young, Ida, Assyria. Well, I own every unit, so like these are all just for imprints, really. And then I don't have a copy of Pure White Trust, so I'm picking one up there, and then these are the other ones that I am rolling with. But good luck on your summon, hopefully you get some stuff.